What you are listening to is real. The parties involved are not cool. They are actual geeks with a case pending in the court of public opinion. The party's case has been dismissed, and the dispute will be settled here on our podcast. There will be no lawyers, there will be no witness testimony. The judge's decisions are final.
Hello, I'm Judge Ivan.
I'm Judge Jonathan, and this is Geeks on Trial. Today's case, Deadpool at 20,000 feet.
Welcome to Geeks on Trial. This is the podcast where we settle petty disputes between actual geeks over movies, video games, board games, and more. If you'd like to submit your own geeky case for a future episode, you can email us at geeksontrial@gmail.com. You can also support the show over at patreon.com/geeksontrial for just a few bucks a month, and you'll gain early access to both audio and video episodes before they're released to the general public. And now, a summary of today's case.
Today's case comes to us from the internet. In the future, we'd love it if you submitted your own cases to us to our email address, geeksontrial@gmail.com. But for today's episode, we have scoured the internet and found the case of one 19-year-old male named Wade. At least that's what we're going to call him for the purposes of today's show. Now, Wade was traveling by airplane on an 11 a.m. flight, and as we all do when traveling by airplane, he got a little bored. To help ease his boredom, he put a movie on his phone with headphones, the superhero action film Deadpool 2 from 2018. This movie is rated R for strong language, violence, sexual content, and graphic nudity. During one scene, a scene in which the villain Juggernaut literally rips Deadpool in half, Wade realized that a young boy behind him, no older than 6, had been watching the movie over his shoulder the entire time. Now traumatized by this scene, the boy began crying. His furious mother scolded Wade, telling him that he should not be watching material like that where children can see it. Now, as dual judges here on Geeks on Trial, it's our job to determine whether or not Wade's watching was wrongdoing. Should he have chosen his media more carefully, or was it no, the children who are wrong? We're going to discuss and deliberate and come up with a sentence and a verdict on today's episode. Now, this is our very first episode of Geeks on Trial, hopefully, if all goes well. It seems only right that maybe we should talk a little bit about who we are and what the general theme of the show is. I think we laid it out pretty well with the opening. We tried to make it very concise and clear. But maybe we should just talk a little bit about our background. Some people might know us, might have seen us on other YouTube things or podcast things out there.
We hope they have.
Yeah, or maybe it's your first time seeing us here on the show. But the genesis of this show was kind of the amount of arguments and debates, it seems, that crop up from the geeky world. And we're also pretty big geeks. And we also tend to argue a lot amongst ourselves and within our friend group. Would you say that's accurate?
That's 100% accurate. And I would say most of these cases aren't coming from our real lives, unless we submit them and lie about the names, which heck we might do. But yeah, we tend to fight about things, and I feel like that happens a lot when you have a group of geeks in one room over and over again. We're a very judgmental crowd, which is why we're doing this show right here.
Yeah, and we're not talking about which movie you think is better than another movie, that kind of thing. But these are like the real issues, the social issues that crop up from these types of events. I mean, you can see we're decked out. It's very official because we have robes and gavels.
Right. Well, this is what I wear every day.
Oh, okay.
This is my everyday outfit.
It's a good look for you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Do you usually wear anything underneath?
Nope, but I also have a powdered wig on most of the time, so it's fine.
Yeah, no, that does counteract that makes up the balance. That's true. And we didn't say order in the court or anything, so I guess now order in the court.
Yes. Yeah.
We don't have a bailiff. We don't have a jury.
Nope.
We are 2 judges, and again, our decisions are final at the end of this show.
And they may be unfair, but that's our say in the end.
Oh yeah, we're the dictators here. We're co-dictators.
And if you also want to pay us off, we might go with you That's what the Patreon's for.
That's yeah, if you submit a case and prove that you're a patron, we'll lean towards your side of the
We
equation.
accept bribes.
So let's get into today's case. I summed it up. We're calling him Wade, and
Mm,
he was watching Deadpool again, Deadpool 2 on his phone.
right.
And we're trying to determine whether or not that was wrong. Was it his fault that a little kid was traumatized potentially by what he saw on that phone? That's what we're going to get to at the end of the show. I'm actually a little bit conflicted on this case, but I sort of want to start by asking you uh, what you think your general policy is regarding watching things either on a plane or on a train or a bus, just in any kind of like public setting. Is that something you do?
Like what? Watch things? Yes.
Yeah, like if you're on a plane or whatever, will you take out your phone and watch a Netflix show or what have you?
9 times out of 10, I'll fly like a budget airline who doesn't have like a TV in front of me. And even if the airline, like if we fly JetBlue to go anywhere, they usually edit the movies for plane viewing, which would probably get rid of this issue. So I try not to watch the edited movies because I don't like watching a TBS version or a made for cable version of a TV show or movie. So yeah, I will watch something on my phone, but usually like my phone is it's a fairly small it's a cell phone sized phone. I'm not like hanging it on the seat in front of me. It's on the table or in my lap. So
Right.
whatever I do watch, I'm not really concerned like if anybody can see over me or like see what's going on my screen as long as it's not like personal information on my screen. But like
You're not filling
watching
out your
something,
taxes or your bank account information.
right. I usually save that for doing like a live stream. I do those right on air. But
I can see
yeah,
it reflected in your glasses.
I, yeah, I usually don't like pay attention to that kind of stuff. Like sure if there's a kid sitting next to me, like right next to me,
Mm,
maybe I'll be aware of that, but also like
mm.
my upbringing was different. Like I wasn't allowed to watch like South Park and stuff like that, but like the occasional rated R movie, depending on what it is, would have been fine.
It's funny you say that because I literally remember as a child going to your house and watching South Park, which my parents wouldn't let me do.
Right.
I feel like your parents were in some ways more lenient than mine were when it came to some of that stuff.
Well, and at a certain age too, my parents just kind of like I'm the
I
baby
guess
of the
we were like
family.
12 or 13 by then, maybe. I don't
Right.
know.
They just kind of gave up. They're like, you're the baby of the family, here you go. But like it depends though, because like animated graphics or like violence, they didn't really care about. But if it was like sex on screen, they'd kind of be
Oh,
like, maybe not. Oh,
heaven forbid.
did I pique your interest with sex?
No, you're scandalizing me. Stop saying it so loud. Now we have to mark this explicit.
Right.
You said the S word. Well, first of all, I'm with you in that I never watch a rare like you. Rarely am I on a plane with a little screen. I mean, on my seat.
Yeah.
And when I am, I prefer to just listen to a podcast or maybe read something on Kindle.
Right.
I for one thing, I just don't like watching stuff on a plane. It's like unless I was on a flight that was like an 8 hour flight. I just
Yeah.
feel like I'm gonna get distracted, or the flight's gonna end, or like the lights are gonna flash, or snacks are gonna come by, and I don't need. And this, I know the screen also, it's not gonna be good quality. It's not gonna
No.
look good. The sound's not gonna be good. It's just not my bag. But I am like pretty self conscious, and this is more, I think, of a personal thing where like I just feel like people are gonna be looking at me, like even if I take out my Switch, and I'm gonna use this gavel as a prop.
Mhm.
I'm if I'm playing on my Switch, for instance, it looks like this.
Yep, that's
I,
what mine looks like too.
I feel I don't always want to play some games. I'm like, I don't know. The person next to me is going to be like, "Who's this loser playing this game?"
Like,
That's why
well,
I like my headphones. My podcasts are like they're just for me. Nobody knows what I'm doing.
now is that more so of a like they're going to judge you for the content in general or because it's violent, sexual,
Well,
except like
it's more the content in general. However, I will say I definitely would feel awkward there are some movies that I certainly watching on a plane, if it got to a scene. Now, Deadpool is one thing, we can get to that specifically because that's a little more on the cartoony end of violence, although it is
Right.
still rather violent.
Yeah.
But because I am a repressed American, certainly sex or nudity on screen, which also is in Deadpool 2, I would feel uncomfortable being like, the person next to me is going to look over and think I'm some kind of a pervert.
Well,
Uh,
yeah, yeah, the second you throw any nudity, sexual, whatever into it, that in my opinion, that's like an automatic no, which is weird because like you said, we are Americans, and that flies in other countries, not literally. But
that's funny.
it is weird that you and I think like violence potentially is better than like sex on
Yeah.
viewing it.
And I know intellectually, I know that's wrong, and I know it's because of like
Right.
United States media and how I was raised. But I still can't shake it. I still like if I'm going to sit down, I will watch, Saving Private Ryan or something with my parents 100 times before I watch anything that has like a one sex scene in it.
Right.
I'm not going near. I will literally. I was recently at my mom's over Christmas, and it's like, let's watch some movies together. And I like looked, I like, let's watch this movie. I've seen it before. Like, I want to know nothing
Right.
weird is going to come up. I know it's because I'm very repressed, but I
Well,
can't
but
help it.
that's not really a repressed thing. It's just like I'm not going to watch this in the same room as my parents.
I
Like
don't
in
know.
general,
It's you could argue. I don't
like
know.
I don't know.
Talk to my
But
therapist about it.
also like you and I have both worked in media of some sort. Like you've done radio shows. I've worked for cable news networks. Like we also have that in our head too of like we kind of always self edit and
Hmm.
like don't want to kind of like know the rules and boundaries a little bit more than like some people would.
Maybe. Yeah,
I
maybe that's
feel.
part of it. Yeah, I'm just someone in general who, when I go out shopping or whatever, I don't want anyone to pay attention to me. I don't want
Right.
to make a ruckus. I don't want to complain. I just want to do my thing and leave and go home. I want
Right.
to blend in.
Well, that's why we do content. Like that's our creation is this.
It is really like contradictory because I've done so many of these things where I'm in front of a camera making an
Right.
ass of myself, but in real life I'm the
It's
opposite of that.
different. Right.
Yeah, it's a different thing.
Now, going back to the clip in question, it's it's not realistic.
Yeah, so if
Like
people can find this, if you want, you can just Google like Deadpool 2 rip in half scene. You'll find this scene.
right. Well, we have a still frame. I'm sure I'll put up somewhere. If you're listening to the podcast, you could click the link below. But it's kind of like it reminded me. It's a little bit more gory of the scene in Kung Pao where the guy punches a hole through someone's stomach. Like
Yeah.
it's gross, but like I wouldn't necessarily say it's like over the top gory. Yeah, there's blood, but it wasn't like I don't know.
You
But maybe
do see some guts, I feel. There's like
yeah,
a little bit of some viscera.
and I guess how old was the kid? 6?
He said, this is from Wade's perspective. We don't know for sure, but he said no older than 6, so could have been younger. Could have been 4 or
Right.
5. Or it could have been 7 or 8. It's hard to who knows I can't
Right.
tell ages. But yeah, so that's the content of it is one thing.
Right.
It's certainly it could make an impression on a young kid who hasn't seen that sort of thing before. I could see
Right.
how that could be upsetting. Like, as a parent, which I am not, I
What?
probably that I know of, I, I I probably would not want my kid to watch Deadpool 2 at 6 years old. I'm pretty lenient. I'm like a pretty liberal person with what I think kids can handle.
Right.
At 6 years old, I probably would be like, not yet.
Maybe not the first, like the full movie, but like over like getting a glimpse of it or watching it like on an air
Mm.
like I don't know. That's
Well,
it's
that's
interesting.
it's certainly that's one thing. But certainly I think you don't want to whatever the parent's thing is, you want to
Mhm.
respect the parent's thing. Now the problem here is, of course, Wade did not know someone was watching, and he did not. It's I think it's pretty unreasonable to expect him to stand up and say, Are there any kids behind me? Because I'm
Right.
about to watch something." But at the same time, he is in a public space. So where do you draw that line? How what's the compromise you make? I think there is you shouldn't I think we can agree, like, you shouldn't watch hardcore pornography on an airplane.
And that story has come up a few times over, like, on the internet over the years,
And that was
of
my
people
bad.
like
I apologized for that. I learned my
or
lesson.
even people, like, on dating apps on the plane, and there's explicit stuff on those going through stuff. Like, if there's any X-rated content, I would think that's a definite, like, would probably get you not kicked off a plane, because what are they gonna do, throw you out the door? But, like like a no-no for that kinda thing.
And I think it's worth noting too that this he was watching it on a phone, not a
Right.
laptop. So I mean, phones have gotten
Right.
bigger, but a phone is still, it's not that big.
Now,
It's
it's phone-sized.
there you go. That's how
Now,
to show it. Like,
going
yeah.
stepping into the mother's shoes, very uncomfortable, it hurts. Um,
High
what
heels maybe.
what was
No.
she doing the entire time the child was watching this?
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
Where was she? Yes, I know that's a terrible argument, like, the parent can't always have their eye on the child at all times. I get that. But if he was watching most of this movie through the like, I've been on enough airplanes where it's like, you have to be fairly close or tall enough to see through the crack, because usually they go up. So he was either watching it through, like, that much space, or he was, like, peeking over the seat to watch.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that it goes back again to the fact that he was watching it on a phone. I do think this kid had to be kind of going out of his way
Right.
to to see what was happening there. Like, it's not like he wasn't being exposed to it. Like, he was trying to watch it.
Right. It's
Right.
not like the plane had the screen come down and say, "This is what we're watching today." So
Attention passengers. Deadpool 2 will be showing to
oh,
all children under 7. Right. So
only.
yeah. So is it the mom's responsibility? Should she, like, be looking at her kid and be like, "What are
Right.
you looking at?"
I definitely
Probably.
think so, because, like, you don't know what could be going up. People are freaky on airplanes. They could be doing whatever going on up there. People are weird. Um, so, like, you should be aware of, like, oh, my child hasn't been looking at his, I don't know what kids do now, comic book, the entire time. What is he focused on?
Mhm.
And even
Mhm.
if the mom, or it was the mom, I believe, the parent was asleep, kind of be, like, roughly aware of your child in this situation. Like, not enough to be like, she shouldn't have freaked out that much over where it's like she can be like, "Hey, kid, don't look over here. Let's distract. Put a coat over the seat in front of her." Something.
Yeah, put a coat over the child's head.
Right. Put a bag over it. It's fine. It's good.
Just cover
It's
them up with a
nap
blanket.
time.
No phone watching for you.
Right. So, but when I go on a plane or whatever, it might just be my oblivious self. I don't take notice who's around me.
Yeah.
Like, I
Well,
won't sit in a seat and, like, turn around and be like, "Oh, there's kids behind me. There's somebody in front of me." Usually, it's such an anxious, experience anyway. It's just worrying about getting to my seat, getting my bag, and that's it.
I mean, I think that's true of, for as much as I said I'm constantly worried about uh, people paying attention to me. The truth is, no one is ever paying attention to you. E-
Right,
Every single person is only worrying about themselves.
right,
They don't care. They really don't care what you're doing, unless you happen to be watching Deadpool and they're 5 years old and they want to see it, I guess.
exactly.
So I don't know where that leaves me. I'm not sure. I don't know if I was making a point by saying that, but
That's fine.
it feels like I feel like so far there's a little bit of, I don't know if even blame on either side. It almost feels like it's kind of nobody's fault to me right now. Nobody's really fully to blame it yet, but there is a little
Right.
bit, like, we agree that there is a point somewhere where you shouldn't be watching certain content on a plane.
Right, but, like, where that content lies, like, I don't know if we're getting into this yet,
Yeah,
but
we
like
can get
I
into
don't
it.
think the graphic violence that they showed in this is pushing the limit of the rated R content.
Yeah, I think that's one of the big questions is does this push that in that way? And I have a I don't know if you know the website commonsensemedia.org.
I think I've heard of it. Oh, that's
It
like a government website or yeah, good.
I have no idea who runs it, but probably everything's governed by the government these days. But it will you can look up a movie. It's designed for parents, and it will
Right.
tell you exactly what the objectionable content is in that movie. And I have some of the issues in Deadpool. Now, a lot of it is uh, profanity, which shouldn't be an issue because he's watching this with headphones. The audio shouldn't matter, right?
Right.
So we're only worrying about the visuals. So and I guess minor spoilers for Deadpool 2, but here we go. Some of the things they mention, they say, quote, tons of extremely graphic violence, much of which is close up and very gory and gross. Torture, decapitation, dismemberment, a brutal hand-to-hand combat, and much, much more. Adults also smoke, drink, and use drugs. There are some sexual references. This says there's no sexual nudity, but there is a quick shot of baby genitals played for humor.
I would be more so concerned about that.
Which I thought the R rating, the MPAA said it did have graphic nudity, but maybe I read the wrong thing. Doesn't matter. I said it, so it's true now.
Sure.
Um, so the scene that in question that we watched was the thing that set it off. But it could be argued maybe, and I haven't watched Deadpool 2 since it came out.
I've never seen it.
So yeah, so it's hard for us to say definitively, but it sounds like there was maybe worse stuff than that particular
Right.
scene.
And also on that side too of like, okay, because I kind of have strong opinions on what we show children and what they can see. You know, a lot of this stuff you can't show on network television, but the news, which is technically family programming, does show much worse and talk about much worse,
Right, right.
especially during certain election years.
Oh, you shouldn't. I don't think you should be watching the news on a plane. That should be banned
Right.
too. But yeah, I mean, I think we'll both be in agreement that yeah, in general, yeah, I mean, what content is okay for people to watch is a tricky area, and a lot of times it really so
Right.
much depends on the person and the kid and the parent. But I think in this instance, the difference is that the kid wasn't, this guy wasn't the kid's parent. But
Right.
again, then I have to go back and say the kid was going out of his way to watch it. So I feel like
Right.
that's almost the linchpin of this case is the fact that that's almost the question of it. That's what we need the video footage to break this case wide open. I wish we had is if I could just see, was that kid really like, could he see it or was he like going like this?
Yeah, because what you said before is right. You don't like. At what point do you have to stand up and be like, "How many minors are on this plane? Is it okay if I watch this movie on my personal device in a seat that I paid for?"
And it's not like you get on a plane and they have like a sign saying you cannot watch this level of content or something.
Oh, you
Uh
know what? That's interesting because
like there
there
yeah,
is
there's
no like rules.
no, yeah, there like legally and, plain abidingly. They, there's no sign that says please keep your content to this or that. They don't
Right.
even say like keep your music down, right? Like theoretically am I allowed to
Right.
just like blast my music or whatever?
I guess
No,
technically, like they might come over and be like, "Would you not?" But
they
like,
would definitely would.
okay,
Uh
so next time you and I fly together, we'll bring a boombox
Yeah, yeah,
and just
just
play the
blast some
most
tunes.
foul music that we can find. And
Eminem, except now Eminem is in trailers for DreamWorks cartoons.
is he really?
Um, yeah, the latest Minions movie used without me, right? Which is
Nice.
just the ultimate. We were old now. It's what was once the most offensive thing to our parents' generation is
Right.
now fodder for children's films.
But that also brings up an interesting point because now that we have younger parents, like millennial parents, et cetera, what is like the MPAA is going to have to change at some point because like that violence of him being split in half might not be offensive to a lot of people now who grew up playing like GTA. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah,
just
yeah.
based on what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, those cultural norms do shift. I mean,
Right.
we used to not be able to do a lot of things in movies that you can do now in movies. So,
And I'm also interested to like, was the mother like, oh, it's again, religious events, or it's just because he's so young?
yeah, I mean, that's who knows. The reasons that for that could be very complex, but it certainly seems like it was primarily this is a young kid and she
Right.
was upset about that.
She was probably more so just upset that like the kid woke her up. Because if he just starts screaming,
Right. Yeah, no, yeah,
like,
if he sat there and was fine with it, she wouldn't even notice. But
and
now she's the one who looks bad because it's her kid screaming on a plane.
how far into the film was that section? Because like there had to be worse stuff before that. These movies aren't tame.
That's a good question. I off the top of my head, I don't know. I would guess that's maybe like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. It's not I don't think it's early, but I don't think it's near the end. But I don't I honestly don't couldn't tell you. That's
Because
just
now
a
I'm like, did the kid start screaming because, oops, I got caught. Let me make it look worse than it actually is. That I wasn't just watching this.
now you've made this 6-year-old a diabolical.
He's a creep. They're six. Come on now.
No, I would give this 6-year-old the benefit of the doubt that they were genuinely upset by what they watched. I mean,
Right.
I watched that scene and I could see if you're a little kid, especially if you hadn't seen stuff like that before. Like he probably is from a household where they're not watching stuff like Deadpool
Right.
2.
Which
That's
most probably, yeah, most
most.
6-year-olds, I've worked with 6-year-olds before. Like most don't know what a Deadpool is. Like
Right. They think that that's some kind of a YMCA you don't want to go to.
right. Well, that
Uh,
would be a good Goosebumps book title.
the
The
YMCA you don't want to go to?
No, that's a pedophile list.
Now, I
No,
don't know.
no, Goosebumps, the Deadpool.
The Deadpool. Sure, why not? Have you seen the Infinity Pool?
No.
That's a movie you really don't wanna show your 6-year-old.
Alright.
That is a that
Wait,
is
I don't have a 6-year-old, I don't think.
okay, well, if and when you get one,
Mhm.
maybe I'll get one for you later, and
Thank you.
just don't on one condition that you don't show 'em any of the pool movies.
Okay.
Are there any others? Deadpool, Infinity Pool?
I'm sure
I think
there's some
that's it.
stupid, like, deathbed style movies, like Deathpool.
Yeah, that's pretty close to Deadpool.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I feel like we've explored a lot of these angles so far. I feel like,
Mhm.
uh,
Except for
I,
the angle where the kid was. We don't know that one.
right? That's the literal angle we can only speculate on.
Right.
But I am. It is a little bit tricky for me. I'm not 100% convinced one way or the other because, like I said, I do think there's a limit. I think that's really the question: is was Deadpool 2 up into the limit of content you should watch in public? And it sounds like for you, the answer is no. That you think it's okay.
So the kid behind you can't really hear what's going on in your phone, so he can't hear the sound effects, he can't hear the cursing, he can't hear whatever. He just sees the person getting split in half. So I don't think it's that terrible. I mean, it's not great, but it's not that bad.
It's better. It's better than like seeing it on a 50-foot screen in front of you
Right.
and those images being burned into your retinas for the rest of your life as you go to sleep every night.
Right.
You have to talk to your therapist years later. I'm afraid I'm going to get ripped in half by a large man.
True. And like when I was a kid, like I have two older sisters, so I used to walk down the stairs in my house and I used to like this is the years of like Beavis and Butthead and the early years of South Park. So I would like watch between the crack of our living room door, watch these episodes, and like I could barely hear what's going on. So like I could remember that I walked down the stairs and watched these episodes, but I can't tell you like it's not in my brain. Like I don't think this was like core memory for this kid.
Yeah. Yeah. Hopefully not. Hopefully not at that scale. What was your? Was there a lot of sneaking to watch the R-rated media's when you were a kid? Were you?
Not really. I'm I'm trying to think when I got a TV in my room, because we were a fan. Like my parents weren't really up on technology, really. Like they came to me for tech questions. So like
Mhm.
we didn't have like the what is that, the V chip in the TV or the parental, like you punch in a code so you can't watch whatever. So
Yeah.
like my bedroom had like the basic cable packages. So like the worst thing that I could see on Comedy Central after 1 o'clock would be those Girls Gone Wild commercials.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, that was definitely at that point, it was what, 14, 15 maybe,
right.
and I was definitely like watching Comedy Central late at night with the volume real low so they didn't,
Yeah,
or Adult Swim or whatever. Like I didn't
right,
I didn't want that to be known. I was fairly sheltered, I feel, in that sense growing up. I was not allowed to watch R-rated movies
right,
at all until I was probably 17. Like
right.
I think the first R-rated movie I watched was like The Matrix. That I really watched in full, unless until and also my parents didn't even like pay for the movie channels until I was like high school aged. So it wasn't even like I could
Now,
try to sneak HBO or something.
did they do that on purpose so you couldn't see the stuff, or they just didn't have them?
I think they just didn't care like to watch it for
Right.
themselves. So it didn't come up. I do remember specifically they would not let me see The Mask when it came out in theaters, which I feel like in many ways is the 90s equivalent of Deadpool, is The Mask. It, right?
Okay.
It,
Yeah.
they're pretty similar character
Right.
archetypes.
Maybe
And
not so much violent because it was a different era. That was like the
it
'90s,
wasn't
but
rated R, it was PG-13, but they're both fourth wall breaky, wacky kind of characters,
right.
irreverent humor. And it was when it came out on video, we were at like a Super Bowl party of some family on our street, and they were all watching The Mask, and that was my big. I like went in and watched it, and then I was like, I've already seen it, so you might as well let me
Exactly.
get it because I you can't. I'm already messed up. It's too late for me.
I can't remember what my first like bad movie was, but I know my first like shoot 'em up video game was GoldenEye. So
I
like I would probably have to say like double O, like some of the James Bond movies. I know that I don't think they're rated R.
no,
I
no,
don't
no,
know.
no.
But those were like probably like my first violence things, and those are barely violent, I would say.
It's funny. I think I was even more on video games. I never the thing is as a kid, I never really had an interest in those games. I never really
Right.
cared about GoldenEye or Grand Theft Auto. I didn't really want to play them. I remember the first time I had to ask my mom to get me Time Splitters 2
Hmm.
on the GameCube, which has like a guy with a gun on the cover.
Right.
And my mom did not like that. She was like really disapproving, like, this is what you're doing now. There's a gun on this,
Well, I
which
definitely think that's the difference between our parents. Like my mom was like would sit me down and like, you like this is a game. You can't go and do this in real life. And I'm like, yeah, ma. So,
my mom was also very hypocritical because it was like she would let us watch The Simpsons because she liked The Simpsons,
right.
but there was definitely stuff on The Simpsons that
That
was
were
still like adults.
yeah.
Parents are all just hypocritical pieces of
What was
shit.
that? Like the first season of The Simpsons where they were like at the psych
The
hospital and they
orgy
were
scene. Oh
yeah,
no,
and they
that
were
yeah,
and they were like getting electrocuted and like like and they're hitting each other with the baseball
yeah.
bats.
That's like episode 3 or something.
Right. So and that shit was on prime time.
Itchy
So
and Scratchy. I mean, come on.
right.
That's that. Honestly, there's some parts of Itchy and Scratchy that might be worse than that scene in Deadpool
Yeah.
2.
And that
There's some
crosses
gross stuff.
that brings up a whole nother point because like Simpsons are more cartoony. This was semi-realistic CGI work, but whatever.
Yeah. Which is funny because I wonder if this parent would have had an issue if it was Saving Private Ryan. If
Right.
it was like Schindler's List. I don't
Right.
know. Which is a weird thing to be watching on your iPhone on the plane, but
Right. You don't I only watch it on my iPhone.
it's the way Spielberg intended.
Actually, you know what my first R-rated movie probably was? Not even I think it was R-rated, Titanic.
No, that's PG-13. That's
Is it?
PG-13.
Because there's
Yep.
like X amount of nudity in it, but I
There,
guess it's
but
okay.
she's topless, but there's no sexuality that's explicit in that
Right.
scene. So they like can argue that it's it's artistic, like you're seeing an oil painting or something.
Right.
That's how they got away with it.
I find it just ironic too that my parents were like, "No female nudity for you." I'm like, "Little did you know." So,
Yeah, yeah.
yep.
The internet nowadays, kids can just look on the internet and
Well, that's the other thing too. We're from an era of internet of like, it was gross for a
there
period of
was
time.
there was still a I feel like back then though a hope that you could actually stop your kid from seeing certain things. That's
Right.
gone now. If your kid has a phone or a tablet or
You
access to
can't
an internet, which yeah, they're gonna see it. They're gonna see everything
because yeah, when
eventually.
because I think in your because we've known each other forever. I think in your childhood computer there was blocks on it, if I remember.
If there were, I think they like came by default. Maybe it was like an AOL kid setting or
Right.
something. I don't think my parents ever went out of their way to.
Because
They
like our
didn't know
parents
enough.
didn't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they would have asked me, "Hey, how do we set up the parental controls?" I'd be like, "I don't know."
Nowadays, you're on an airplane, you're on the bus, you don't know where you
Right.
are. There's
Because you
there's
can't
billboards.
because you can block Wi-Fi like issues, but like once you're on a cell service, I don't think you could block that kind of stuff. But we don't have kids, so I can't really.
No, that we know of.
Right. This kid can't watch this podcast or listen to it.
No, they cannot. Should we get to our verdicts, our
We
final
should.
verdicts? Do you want to go first or should I?
You should.
All right, so we're gonna each make our a final decision here, and then decide if Wade is guilty or not guilty. And I think as I've said enough so far in this show that I'm a little bit conflicted, but ultimately based on the facts, and I think of what it comes down to is the fact that this kid was behind him, the fact that the phone is a smaller screen that they're watching and with headphones, and that Deadpool 2, it's borderline for me. I think a little more than it is for you. I'm a little like it is pretty violent. Maybe that's a little iffy to be watching on a plane, but it's not so over the top. So
Right.
I'm gonna give this kind of I'm giving Wade a soft not guilty. I don't think maybe he could use a little better judgment. Maybe it's not the greatest thing to do, but I don't
Right.
think he did anything truly wrong in this instance.
Yeah, I 100% agree. Like in my opinion, the child was behind him. The mother technically wasn't paying attention. I'm assuming. I don't know. You know, I'm sure he looked on either side of him. There wasn't a kid there. I don't think you should have to worry about what you're watching on your personal device because that kid's a peeping tom. What's he going to grow up to be? He's going to be a creep. That's what he's going to be. I said, yeah, 100% not guilty.
All right, it's unanimous for our first episode. Not guilty. Now, then I think maybe the question is if the what punishment we serve to the mother and child. We have to we got to
Mm.
sentence them. I think maybe the what I think it's like a box like when you smoke a cigarette, they make you smoke the whole pack. That kid now has to watch the entire Deadpool franchise.
Yeah,
I think
100%.
that's fair.
Or just that scene over and over again in VR.
Like a Clockwork Orange, we make
Yep.
him.
Put the thing in.
Yeah,
Hey,
that's
and all we know is this could be the freeing moment for this kid. He just realized, "Oh, I like these movies," or "These are terrible. I never want to see these." So it's like this could have been a life-changing event for this little tot.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you. I do think there's a point where some kids uh, I don't think it's a bad idea to expose them to quote unquote adult content. Like I said,
Right.
Deadpool 2 maybe isn't the best thing to start off with,
Right.
but
Hardcore porn? Go ahead.
that's what I'm talking about. Show
Right.
this kid some hardcore porn, whatever kind you like, incest.
Right. Glory hole. It's fine. Whatever you like. Yeah, maybe for a kid, furry porn. Kind of
You
have
know,
the
you know
both.
what? Order. I got to call order on us. I think that's probably gonna
Right.
do. We shouldn't dig ourselves too deep into this corner.
Up getting a phone call. It's the FBI. I gotta go.
but we have successfully reached a verdict and censoring sentencing for our first episode of Geeks on Trial, and I
Funny
think it
that
was
you said censoring there.
as a little bit of a Freudian slip. I think it was a great success,
It was.
as Borat might say.
And let us know what you think of the show in the comments of the YouTube video or by giving us a 5-star rating over on the iTunes podcast store. I don't know what they call it now. It's been
Yeah, the Apple iTunes podcast music.
podcast store.
Yeah, that would be great if you would rate us over there. And you could also give us your feedback to our email, which is geeksontrial@gmail.com. Let us know if you side with us in this case. Do you think Wade is guilty or not guilty? And do you think it's fair to subject this child to repeated punishment of watching horrifying imagery until his brain explodes?
It's true.
I think it is, but you can tell us what you think.
And until next time, my name is Ivan Hahn,
My name is Jonathan Estes.
and this is Geeks on Trial.